bearable.
All
The
right.
old lock.
All right. So we're here, and yeah. So let me just check to see if anyone's joining us. If you can hear us, just let us know. I will just make sure that we are loud and clear here. Yeah, we should be. It is picking up. Can you say?
Yeah, so
Oh, okay.
let me just check to see if
Do you want to say
anyone's
something?
joining us. If you
Yeah, good morning, everyone.
Oh.
I hope you can hear me this week.
just
Yeah, excellent. All right,
loud and
very nice. All right, 6 o'clock. So let's start then. Yeah.
yeah, we should be
Yep.
is picking up.
All right.
Yeah,
For everyone tuning in, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to apologize for last week's technical difficulties. I know a lot of you tune in to listen to this interview, but unfortunately, technology let me down. But I fixed all that. Hopefully, we can keep going today. And first of all, thank you very much to Luke Chadwick to taking time to come back, because it must have been quite frustrating. Anyway, let me give you a very warm round of applause, Singapore style. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls tuning in, let me introduce you to Luke Chadwick, former Manchester United winger. Luke, let's start with talking about what's been happening in the UK. Or how are you keeping busy?
Yeah, obviously we're all on lockdown in the UK, so it's a case of keeping busy. We just come out of being allowed out for 1 hour exercise. Now we're free to go out and exercise as much as we like. So it's starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, I think, and hopefully things will start returning back to normal pretty quickly now, I hope.
Excellent. That's the way it should be. I suppose everywhere around the world, people are slowly coming back to normalcy. But I know you do quite a few things, not just, I suppose you just finished playing as well, right? Not too long ago. I want to pick up from where we left off last week. Last week, we were trying to get your background, where you started, how you came into Manchester United and stuff like that. So I want to go back in time. Let's go back in time and find out a bit more. I know you started your career with Cambridge United, your hometown team, at the youth level.
Yes. Yeah, so I played like for the local teams where I lived, and I played for Cambridge United probably when I was about 10 or 11, but then they let me go. They didn't want me anymore. So I ended up leaving them and playing as an under 13 player. I played for Arsenal for a year, and then as an under 14 level is when I got asked to go up to Manchester United. And I went up to Manchester United for a trial, and then ended up signing there at 14 years old. So I spent 2 years as a schoolboy just going up at the weekend. Then when I left school at 16, I moved up to begin my apprenticeship there for 2 years.
No one really talks about your time at Arsenal. Why is it not really recorded in even in your profile? Nobody knows that you actually played for Arsenal.
I don't know. It was so long ago. It wasn't the same in terms of academy football back when I was coming through it as it is now. So my time at Arsenal was just one season where I'd play for them on a Sunday against other professional clubs, and I'd train once a week at Highbury because there was an indoor area there. But because of what my parents were working, it was a struggle for me to get there. So a lot of the time I wouldn't train. I'd just go up there and play on a Sunday. So it wasn't obviously a fantastic football club, but it wasn't a huge part of my life. It was just a game on a Sunday, really.
I want to talk about your early childhood in the sense that who was your biggest influence in football? Because all of us have our own heroes, right? We look up to some player, maybe a father. I'm not sure if your family has a football heritage and stuff like that. Who influenced the way you started with football?
I think my dad took me to my first ever football game when I was about 6 or 7 years old, and it was a Cambridge United game. Cambridge United are a team that play in the lower leagues of English football, but it was the first ever time I'd been to a live game, and I just fell in love with the atmosphere instantly and being so close to the players. So it's probably going to them first live football games that inspired me, and that's what, ever since the first time I saw a game, I just wanted to be a footballer after that. So I'd probably say my biggest inspiration was Cambridge United, and going to watch football there, live football, is what really made me fall in love with the game.
How were you like as a young footballer? I mean, were you always talented? Because I listened to another interview that you done for one of the other media outlets, and you said that you scored quite a few goals for Cambridge United when you were young.
Yeah, so it weren't actually Cambridge United, it was Cambridge schools that I played for. So it was like all the most talented players from the various schools around Cambridge had come together and played for Cambridge schools. So I was always really fast when I was younger. And even from when I started playing organised football as an under-9, in England we used to play on a full-size football pitch with full-size goals. So my teammates had just whacked the ball over the top of the opposition's defender, and I was fast enough to run after it. So I got loads of joy, and I think that gave me the confidence to sort of really see that I was maybe not much better than everyone else, but a lot faster than anyone else, which made me practice a lot more. And then I began to realise that I was improving really quickly. So I think as a young player, I was always a centre forward, a striker, and because I was so quick, I scored loads of goals from all the way through my schoolboy career as a footballer.
Let's talk about the time that you went across to Manchester United and signed as a youth scholar, right? That's how you got there first.
Yeah, so I went up to Manchester for a week's trial. I got scouted playing for the Cambridge schools team, and the second I went up there, I just fell in love with the place. The atmosphere, the environment was just incredible. You were made to feel so welcome straight away, and as soon as you sort of feel a part of it, you feel a part of the club straight away. And as soon as I went up there, that was the place I wanted to be. I just loved it from the moment I first had my first experience of a trialist at Manchester United.
Did you get to meet Sir Alex Ferguson as a young boy when you went there? Was that the first thing you did? Does he get involved with meeting with the young lads that just signed? Is he very much hands on, or he lets people do the business?
Yeah, was in charge of everything. That was the genius of the man. Really, he treated everyone with so much respect. The time I went up there, the first ever time I went up there, I played a game against Nottingham Forest, and he was there watching. And by the time I got home, he'd phoned my mum up to ask me to sign. And this was me as a 14-year-old boy, and he'd do that for everyone. I'd be at the club at Carrington when I was a first team player, and there'd be under 10, under 11 academy players there, and he'd know everyone's name. He'd know where they were from. He'd know a little detail about them just to make them feel so special. He had an incredible aura about him that made everyone want to work as hard as they could. From that come from the players, the girls that cooked the dinner, the kit people that cleaned the kit. Everyone wanted to do everything they could because it was him, because he treated them so well. So he had a massive involvement of the whole club.
I want to talk about the fact that I just pick up on the point that you said he had a chat with your mom. What was said during the conversation? Do you?
I think when my mum told me about it, I thought she was mucking about. I thought this can't be real. But he just phoned up to ask her permission for me to sign for the club. So to hear that as a 14, 15-year-old boy, when he's gone to the trouble of doing that for you, it just makes you feel so special. And there was nowhere else I'd ever sign after that. He went to that trouble. But it wasn't just me he'd do that for. He'd do that for all the players he'd wanted to sign, because he knew that if that personal touch of knowing people and that personal approach was made, that's why Man United got all the best young players at that time, I think.
Let's talk about, getting into the dressing room, because here you are, a young lad, and we all know, it's well documented, we all know around the world that period of Manchester United, there were some superstar names in there. You must have walked into the dressing room and go like, wow, I'm sharing dressing room with these guys.
Yeah, it was like that. You do feel in awe of these players, really, to share a dressing room, to go and train with them. It was incredible. But the standard that was set was obviously through the roof. Every day that the players, not just the quality of football, how hard they work. And I think for people like me, who didn't have a career at Manchester United, and many others that maybe had a few games, it was that initial period of training with players like that allows you to then go and have a career in football, albeit not at that top elite level.
You know, there are a lot of people watching now, and when they eventually watch this video as well, will be wondering, what is it like day to day for a professional footballer at a club like Manchester United, surrounded by superstars? You know, like you turn up at the car park. There must be Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Bentleys, and all of that. And then you're a young boy. How did you turn up, and how did you try and manage all that? Because it can be overwhelming for someone, right, at that age.
Oh yeah, I think it's sort of living it, but day by day, you sort of slowly get used to it and get more comfortable with it. What I would say, obviously, these were huge superstars, the best players in the world, but they were still fantastic people, so they'd always make the young lads feel really welcome that come in and trained, and sort of try to make them feel at ease. It was really intense. I remember at the end of the season where I did play and come on in a few games, at the end of the season I was so exhausted, not because I'd played a huge amount of games, but just from training every day and like sort of fighting and striving to stay at the level that these players were setting. It was just exhausting, really, but an incredible experience.
You know, I just want to get an idea of how you were managing your own presence, because now you're part of a massive club, one of the biggest club in the world, and you are now trying to make it as a player there, because you played at right wing, right midfielder. Let's not forget David Beckham was there at that time. Right, you got one of the best players in the world in that position, and you are trying to take over his place. How hard was that challenge for you?
To be honest, I never really saw it as trying to take over his place, because I think in my heart I knew that I probably wouldn't play in front of him. It was just sort of, it was such a dream. It was sort of pinching myself every day that I was actually in a position where I'm training with these players and playing with these players. Like David Beckham, who's obviously probably one of the biggest superstars that played for the club, he was such a hard-working player. Like every day he'd do extra training. He'd always practice more than anyone else to get to where he got to in the game. So I never saw it as getting past him. It was more of an honour to be part of that squad, and just sort of, as a young boy, just living day by day and just trying to take it all in. Like at times it can be overwhelming to be in that squad, but it's certainly something I'll never forget.
I think, we will get the best value out of this interview if we talked about individual players and then try and coincide that with your career. Because then I think that's what fans will be looking forward to, getting an insight from a player who's been in the dressing room, how he thinks about another player, which is, I feel, is the greatest value we can give to our listeners. I want to talk about certain individual players. We just picked up David Beckham, and we all know that he became a huge star after he started going out with Victoria Beckham and stuff like that. Did you see a change in his character during this time, or was he still that down to earth with his teammates and stuff like that? Because in the media, a lot is said about him, right? We all know, and how media tries to sensationalize things. How did you see him as a global superstar, especially when he started going out with Victoria Beckham?
Yeah, I think I've been asked that question quite a lot, but I think anyone that was with him in that dressing room, I think from what I saw, whatever happened away from the pitch, football was always the most important thing to David Beckham, and you could tell that by how hard he worked. Whenever we done the running exercises, he'd be the fittest. Whenever training finished, he'd always be out there. So for me, and what I saw of it, albeit not for a huge amount of time, it never affected what he'd done on the football pitch at all, and never changed him as a person. He was quite a quiet lad who just come in. Obviously, he was close to a lot of the players that he came through the system with, but nothing ever changed in terms of him thinking he was a bigger star than anyone else. He was always the hardest working player in all the training sessions and everything that he'd done, really. So I didn't see any change, albeit for the couple of seasons I was there, in terms of him going out with a Spice Girl and being a global superstar. It never changed what he was as a footballer.
I want to ask, how was your relationship with Sir Alex Ferguson?
Probably it wasn't I was quite happy to just be around it. So I was quite a shy, quiet boy, so I wouldn't have that many conversations with him. Obviously, I'd do all I could every day to impress him, but he'd always give you some advice, put your arm around you, tell you what he expected of you and that sort of thing. So my relationship was brilliant with Sir Alex Ferguson, but probably not as big a relationship that he needed to have with other players that were sort of doing different things for him. But he was always, like I say, he treated me with just as much respect as he'd treat Roy Keane, and he'd treat Roy Keane the same respect as he'd treat the people that cleaned the kit and done. So everyone was treated incredibly well by the man.
That's a great segue to my next question, because Roy Keane, right? A lot is said about him. A lot of people read about him. The media carries tales about him. But I'd like to ask you, what kind of a captain was he? Because I'll give you an example. I think United was here. You might have been on that tour here years ago to Singapore, and I happened to be at a club, and the United boys were coming through. But the first one to walk through was Roy Keane. So he walked into the club, looked around, and inspected everything. Everything was good. Then he went out and brought the boys back in. Showed that he was a true leader. Like he wanted to have control of the entire situation. In your words, what kind of a person was Roy Keane?
He was the ultimate captain, Roy Keane. He drove the standards every day on the training pitch. He made every day an absolute battle to get the best out of everyone. So everyone would commit to training 100% because the captain was doing it. There was times where on the pitch, in matches and training, where you wish the ground would just swallow you up, because he would certainly tell you in no uncertain terms if your standards weren't what they should be. And that was the same for everyone, whether it was me, a young player coming through, or Ryan Giggs, one of the best players the club's ever had. So he'd always drive them standards. I think it wasn't just that, though. I think too often people just see that side of him off the pitch, like what you mentioned there, making sure that everyone was all right. He'd always look after everyone. So when I was coming through, I couldn't drive at the time, and he'd go out his way to pick me up and take me to training and take me to games. He'd always help out if you had any problems. He was an incredible man. At times, it was tough on the training pitch. Me and a few of the young lads used to joke that you'd rather not be on his team. You'd rather be on the other team because you knew that you were going to get told what to, like, in no uncertain terms. But he was, like I say, the ultimate captain and a wonderful man. I think a lot gets built off of the reputation that he had. And obviously he had a huge reputation for being a hard man on the pitch, but he also had incredible human qualities away from the football pitch as well.
Let's talk about him as a player. I mean, we know his characters as a captain. Does the team get a lift when Roy Keane is on the park?
Yeah, I think just even what he can do vocally in terms of the organisation and sort of, I think after a period of time, him being on the pitch raised everyone a little bit more because he was a captain and because of like the incredible ability he had as a player. I think he was just that sort of reliable man on the pitch that they knew that would be in that position for God knows how many years that he was there in the end.
You know, we need to talk about Eric Cantona, right? I think your career coincided with him while he was at United, right?
So Eric Cantona left when I moved up there full time. So he played as while I was a schoolboy, he was playing, but he was sort of coming to the end. I remember going up to the Cliff training ground when I was signing as a schoolboy, and we got introduced to him, and my mum and dad were there, and my mum absolutely loved him, so she was absolutely delighted. But again, similar, probably the only person as close to Sir Alex in terms of the aura that he had around him. You just being around him made you feel incredible because of what he'd done. Like an incredible aura. I actually played with him once when he come on in Ryan Giggs' testimonial. He'd already finished, but he'd come across to play, and him just to being on the pitch with him, even though he'd retired for a fair few years, was just an absolute honour because of what he'd done for that football club.
You know, during that period when you watch United play, I'm a huge Everton fan, but you know I followed Manchester United at that point in time purely because of Eric Cantona. Just his aura, like you said, the man was just class. The way he played football and stuff like that. I want to talk about Ryan Giggs as well. When you talk about Ryan Giggs, we know that you know his talent and the way he played his game and for how long he actually lasted. What was so special about Ryan Giggs? You know, what did he bring to the Manchester United team, in your opinion?
I think he was the first one to come through with the class of '92. I think he was always considered the best player in that group. I think him coming through really gave the others that belief that it could be done. I think he was so important to the club because he was the player that come through to be a superstar, and everyone else followed him after that because he showed what could be achieved. Having played with him and trained with him, like the man is a Rolls Royce of a footballer. Like the way that he can move, he's so smooth. The balance that he's got, he was really, as a young schoolboy when I was younger, before I'd moved up there, he was always a favourite player of mine. And I think the biggest importance that he had in terms of coming through and making that breakthrough made the likes of David Beckham, Paul Scholes, Nicky Butt really realise what could be achieved. And then the whole conveyor belt of talent really started coming through after that. So I think he was the one that gave everyone belief. And then what he'd done in his career was there's few that can top it, really, playing to the age of what he did and still never really had to change his game a little bit, but could always, even as a 42-year-old, he still looked like he could move so smoothly. And I think that's all the testament to his professionalism and how he got the best out of himself and got himself out training every day with all the extra bits that he'd done on top of that.
Let's talk about yourself. Your debut for Manchester United. Do you remember that still? I'm pretty sure you do, right?
My debut, I actually made my debut when I was 17 in a Worthington Cup, like a League Cup game, because the manager used to play a lot of the younger guys. So I remember getting told that I was playing. About 5 or 6 of us real young guys got told we was playing. It was Aston Villa away. So it was, I was remember being so excited and nervous the night before, and then going to Villa Park at such a huge stadium. And we got beat, I think, 2 or 3-0 on the night against a real strong Villa team. But it was just that feeling of, you feel like you've made it all them years of playing and now actually playing for the first team. It was something I'll certainly never forget. Playing for Aston Villa on the night was Dion Dublin, who was I was a huge fan of his when he was at Cambridge when he was a youngster. So it was really surreal to be on a pitch with the same sort of player that you used to sing the name of when he was watching him as a child. But it was it's something I'll never forget, playing at Villa Park in my debut for Manchester United.
How was that? How was your debut? Were you happy with the way you played in that game, even though you guys lost?
Yeah, I can't. It was such a whirlwind. I don't really remember the game. I think I worked really hard. Sort of adrenaline got me through, and I think I'd done okay. But I don't think it was anything special. But just to get off the pitch, I was so satisfied because I'd just done what I'd always dreamed of playing a first team game of football.
At any point, did you feel that you were, good enough to be part of the first team? Because now you've broken the ceiling. Now you've got your debut. Because as players, we always know that when we play one game, then it's easy to play the next. And, it's the first game that's always the hardest, right? Did you at any point feel that, okay, you know what, I've arrived. I earned my spot here, played in my debut. I need more of this. Have you ever thought about, did you always think that way? Or what was your mindset like at the time?
I think it was always hard to really truly believe that you'd earned your spot in the first team because of the players that were ahead of you and what they'd already done. I think there was probably a stage of the season that I played a few games where I felt a lot more comfortable there, like I belonged there. But I don't think I could ever, thinking back, ever thought I'm going to take Giggs's place or I'm going to take Beckham's place. I thought it would always take one of them leaving for me to play really regularly there. But at the same time, you didn't want that to happen because they were such massive parts of the team. Excuse me.
Yeah. And let's talk about your move to Royal Antwerp, because you went on loan. How did that come about? Is that because you were not getting enough time and Sir Alex thought that you need more game time to perhaps put you in contention for the first team?
Yeah, I think I finished my 2-year scholarship and done really well, and was there was thoughts that I'd been in around the first team. But when I came back for my 3rd year at the club and I weren't in the best of shape, I didn't keep myself as fit as I could have done over the summer, and had a real sloppy start to the season. So I think they saw that I weren't going to be in that first team squad anytime soon. So the decision was made to go over to Royal Antwerp. And I was absolutely delighted because obviously I was playing reserve team football. This gave me the opportunity to have my first real spell playing in front of a crowd every week. And I absolutely loved being in Belgium. It was completely different to a reserve team game in the fact the atmosphere was electric. It was a real European feel where there'd be smoke bombs and stuff coming out. It was for a young 18, 19-year-old boy, it was amazing. And I scored on my debut when I come on, and the fans immediately sort of liked me. So when I played, they'd be singing my name, and it was like, I just absolutely loved it, really.
So you went from Manchester United to Royal Antwerp, and you came with a reputation because you're a Manchester United player. When you went to Royal Antwerp, did they see you like that, as somebody who's going to come and lift them up in the league table, maybe?
I'm not sure. I was there was 2 other lads already out there.
Okay.
And I think they were, at the time, I think Antwerp tried to get me before, but Manchester United said no because they thought I might be around the first team. So I think they were quite surprised to get me in the first place. So although I didn't feel it at the time, I'm not sure what they were expecting, because I was a slightly different player though than what was sort of in the league at the time. It was a lot of possession-based football. Teams would keep the ball really well, but I was so different in terms of every time I'd get the ball, I'd try and run with it. So it sort of excited the crowd a little bit, and it worked. I had a lot of success early on, which gave me the confidence. And then I was quite effective in Belgian football with maybe a different sort of style than they were used to.
If you guys are watching, Manchester United fans, if you got a question for Luke, please feel free to put your comments in. We'll ask him questions as we move along. And what was the season like in Royal Antwerp? Was the level, obviously it's not the Premier League for sure, but what kind of level were you stepping one level down or a couple of levels down to play in Belgium?
No, I don't think so, because when I went to Belgium, the only ever game I'd played for Man United was that game against Aston Villa. I'd never played a Premier League game or anything like that. So in terms of stepping up from reserve team football, I think it was quite a big step up, albeit a completely different style. I went there for that end of one season where we won the Belgian second division. And then I went back out for the start of the next season. And again, the level jumped up quite a lot in the Belgian first division, playing the likes of Anderlecht, Club Bruges. So it was the standard definitely went up. The standard was a lot higher than reserve team football, but a different style as well, a different style of football.
Let's come back to talking about another player in the Manchester United team, Paul Scholes. Because a couple of years ago, I had Paul Scholes in my office. We were doing a couple of promotional things around with him, and one of the things that we did was we took him to the ground where he was supposed to train with the Singapore under-23s, right? So these were the best young boys that we had in Singapore, and he was just giving a masterclass. And the man was pure class. Like when the ball came over, first touch, volley, finish. I mean, he was probably finished, I don't know, a few years. But the class of the man, right? And I want to ask you, because globally, when you ask some top midfielders in the world, who's your choice for the greatest midfielder? And everyone talks about Paul Scholes, right? What was your impression of Paul Scholes? How did you see him week in, week out?
Yeah, I feel I'll get asked a lot, who was the best player that you ever played with, trained with? And it was 100% Paul Scholes. He was an absolute genius. Like you say there, you saw it when he come over and trained over there with you guys. But every day in training, he was the best player. He had eyes in all the players. Like the standard was through the roof, but he just had that little bit more. He could do everything. He could run a training session just playing off one touch. He had the awareness and the intelligence of the man. He was an absolute genius. Short passing, long passing. He used to just come out to train, never used to really warm up, just started whacking balls about. And then as soon as the session started, just switch on, and an absolute joy. It's an absolute honour to say that I shared a football pitch with him. He was a genius, an absolute genius.
Well, like you, he was a very quiet, unassuming character, didn't really like the limelight, just wanted to get on with it. Do you think that was probably his weakness there? Because if he was a bit more flamboyant, maybe a bit more, maybe for the lack of a word, media friendly, do you think he would have been a bigger global star, maybe, as big as maybe David Beckham around the world?
I don't think it's a weakness. You're probably right. He could have made himself a bigger star, but I don't think he wanted to. So I think he lived the life that he wanted to live. He loved Manchester United. He played his whole career at Manchester United, and he's an absolute legend at the club. So I don't think, if you asked him if he wanted to go back and change anything like that, I'm pretty sure he was quite happy living the life that he led and just doing what he done on the foot. Let his football do the talking.
What about the Neville brothers, Gary Neville and Philip Neville?
Yeah, they're hugely enthusiastic. You can tell that they both got the most that they possibly could out of themselves to become world-class footballers. I think Gary was a real leader at Manchester United. Obviously, Roy Keane was the captain, but Gary Neville would organise everything, sort of organise a team day out, sort out the press and everything like that, the PFA rep, that sort of thing. He loved having that sort of power and being in charge, and he was absolutely brilliant at it. So his sort of organisational skills that he was so good at on the pitch, he also had that a lot of that off the pitch. You can tell with the incredible success he's had as a footballer and beyond that now, you can see that the intelligence of the man, really.
I was going to ask, was he always that very opinionated about matches? Because now he does a really good job as a football pundit. I'm not quite sure about his stint at Valencia as a first-team manager, but as a pundit, he's done a really good job. Was he always like that, analysing games and giving his views?
Yeah, I think he was always happy to give his opinion. He was always quite studious of the game, and everyone listened to him as well because of he was like a Manchester United. All he wanted was the best for the football club. I think you see that now with the way he speaks about the club, and I think everyone knew that. So everything that he said was really taken on board.
Just before we move you out of course, Manchester United, you left, you went to West Ham. Before that, you had 2 loan spells at Reading and Burnley before you went to West Ham. I want to talk about that Liverpool game. You got sent off at a Liverpool in a Liverpool game, right?
Yeah, so it was. I think we were getting beat 1-0. Danny Murphy had scored a free kick, and I'd come on as sub, and we was really chasing the game, trying to get the equaliser. There's probably about a few minutes left. Everyone was putting for some reason, I was left as the last defender, which was pretty strange anyway. And I remember Vladimir Smitsa running away, and we were I remember he was holding on to me and I was holding on to him as well. And as soon as we both went down and I heard the referee blow the whistle, I was pretty sure that it meant a red card. So I remember walking off thinking, oh God, I don't know what I'm in for now. In the changing room waiting for the other players to finish and come back in. I was really scared thinking I'd get told off. But when the manager come back in, he was there's nothing else you could have done really. So that was a huge relief that I didn't get a telling off about that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that you were ready for the hairdryer treatment, right?
Yeah, definitely. I remember, I think it may have been Yap Stam got injured and he was in the dressing room and he asked what had happened, why I was coming, and I'd said I'd been sent off. And he sort of said, "Oh, just to have a sit down and wait for the others to come in." And I just sort of sat there looking at the floor, waiting for everyone to come in. And then it all fizzled out. So it was a huge relief that I didn't get the hairdryer treatment.
What was the atmosphere like playing against Liverpool? Because we know that's a massive fixture. As a player, what was it like for you?
Yeah, I think you always realise the extra importance. You certainly sense in the crowd that little bit more edge to the atmosphere. And it's a game that obviously both teams don't want to lose. So there's that extra bit. The first 20 minutes, you notice it, how fast and furious the game is, particularly at Anfield where it's so tight. The atmosphere is so on you straight away. But you do realise what a huge occasion it is, probably even bigger than the Manchester derby, I'd say.
Let's talk about the famous hairdryer treatment, because I'm sure a lot of fans, Manchester United fans, know about Sir Alex Ferguson's hairdryer treatment. Is there anything you can share? Like, were you part of that hairdryer treatment?
I was probably a couple of times where there's once that's probably scared me the most was we were playing I was 16 or 17 and we had a Youth Cup game against Blackburn at Ewood Park and we drew 0-0 and we were really bad on the night. I didn't even know he was there, but then the manager sort of pushed the door open and come in and he went mad at all of us saying that weren't good enough. And it was really scary. But I think in terms of obviously scary that the man's shouting out, I think the worst thing about it is because all you really want to do as a Manchester United player is impress the man. The worst feeling in the world is like you've let him down. So to know that you've let him down and he's got the ump with you is probably more disappointing than it is scary that he's sort of shouting at you.
So your time at Manchester United came to an end. This was in 2004. I suppose it was in the summer that you made a move to West Ham, right? Was that an easy decision to leave Manchester United, because you're leaving an institution where you spent time as a young lad coming through the ranks? That's probably all you knew for a while, and then now you're going to West Ham. Was it a hard thing for you to do?
Not really. In terms of my time at Manchester United had come to an end. I don't think I was going to ever get games there. I think when I went to Reading on loan and then to Burnley on loan, the club sort of knew that I was on my way out. So this was sort of just a way of going to get some first team football and seeing what the future held. I think obviously it was an incredible experience being at Man United, but I think as a young player, when you realise that you're not going to play at a club, it's time to move on and just try and experience being a professional footballer somewhere else and play some games on the way.
Who's the manager at West Ham at the time? Who signed you?
So the manager was Alan Pardew. He was
Pardew.
the same manager that he took me to Reading on loan
Okay.
a couple of seasons before. So I had a previous relationship with him. So West Ham's obviously another massive football club, and it was good for me to have come from a club like Manchester United to then come to a club like West Ham.
And what was that opportunity like? Like, who was in that West Ham team?
So it was a really strong team. The likes of Mark Noble, Matthew Everington, Bobby Zamora, Teddy Sheringham was there as well, Marlon Harewood. So we had a really strong team for being in the Championship at the time. So was it expected to probably win that league, which we didn't. We ended up getting promoted by the playoffs, and it was a really tough season, but the club managed to get promoted in the end, which was obviously the overall goal.
How would you sum up your time at West Ham? Because you're there for 2 seasons.
Yeah, I think from the time I left in my second season at United, I suffered from a few injuries around my groin and pelvis, which resulted in me having an operation. And whereas my game was built around speed, really, that was what I was known for, just running with the ball, being quick with the ball. I sort of lost a little yard or half a yard of pace that made me a bit too ineffective to play for Manchester United or in the Premier League. I think I probably spent the next 4 or 5 years of my football career probably trying to change the style of the way I played, because I wasn't effective being a really fast, direct winger anymore. So it was a real change in style. I think I done okay at West Ham, but again, I wasn't at my best because I didn't really know my game well enough.
Because from there, after 2 seasons, you went on loan to Stoke City, then to Norwich. Eventually ended up signing for them. It was a permanent move there. Spent 2 seasons there. How was that like?
So again, as my career went on, there was quite a few injuries. I made my debut for Norwich against Ipswich, which is quite a big derby game at Ipswich. I scored a goal and was delighted, obviously. The crowd were all singing my name. And at the end of that game, I got a really bad injury, which resulted in me being in hospital for the next couple of nights in Ipswich. And then I was out for about 8, 9 months and never really got back to playing regularly at Norwich. So I was delighted because it's a fantastic club. It was quite close to where I live in Cambridge, so it was nice to be settled at home with my family. So it was really disappointing that I never really played any of my best football at Norwich, really.
So did you feel that your career was winding down a bit, because from Norwich you went to Milton Keynes Dons? Did you feel that your career was, you were at the height of Manchester United and you're slowly seeing yourself dropping divisions?
No, I don't think I ever really felt that. I really just loved being a football player, regardless of obviously a great honour of playing for Man United or ending at Cambridge United. It was always what I dreamed of doing. I don't think I ever felt like it was winding down. I felt like I still had, if I could get myself fit, I'd sort of change the style of my play. I thought I still had good years ahead of me to play football, albeit at a lower level than what I started at.
You also played for England under 18s and under 21. That must have been a real honour, not just for you, for your family as well.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I think I got in, we had trials when I was at Man United to get into the England under 18 team. And the manager was Howard Wilkinson at the time. And then he got the job as the under 21 manager, and he took me straight into it, which was a huge surprise, really, because I'd not really played any first team football. And I was thrown into the squad with the likes of Jamie Carragher, Frank Lampard, really top Premier League players. So that was an incredible experience. And I think I arrived at the first under-21 game and no one really knew who I was because I'd never played a game, really.
So let's talk about that, because that's important. When you go into a team where no one really knows you because you haven't played Premier League football, what was your mindset like? Because you have to work maybe 3 times harder than the other players, that just to prove that you deserve a slot there.
Oh yeah, definitely. It was it's actually quite uncomfortable being around that. But I didn't know what to do. They all arrived in their tracksuit. I came in a shirt and tie because I didn't know what to do, and it was a really awkward situation. But obviously, like anything else, all that matters is what you do on the football pitch. And I think I played my first game at Reading against Luxembourg, I think, and played really well. So I thought slotted into it quite nicely after that.
By this time, you from Milton Keynes Don, you moved to Cambridge United. You moved back home in some ways.
Yeah, so like I said at the start, what inspired me to become a professional footballer was going to watch them games at Cambridge United as a young boy, and it was always my dream to play for the club. So it was an incredible way to end my career, sort of living out my schoolboy fantasy of playing for the club that I used to watch, and scoring a goal there was obviously an incredible feeling. So it was a dream ending to my career, really, to finish at that club.
Did you end up managing them as well? You managed Cambridge as well, right? Or were you just a player there?
Just a player there. I've done some work coaching in the academy and that sort of thing, but I've never really fancied being a first team manager. It's not something that I sort of dream of doing in the future or anything.
You went back to Old Trafford to play against Manchester United while playing for Cambridge United in the FA Cup. Or was that right?
Yeah, that was we drew Manchester United in the FA Cup fourth round, and we played the home game at the Abbey Stadium, and somehow, I don't know how, managed to draw 0-0. So then we had the trip up to Old Trafford, and that ended up being the last game of professional football I ever started. So it's quite a nice story to round it all off, really.
What was the reception from the fans at Old Trafford? Obviously, they remember you. What was it like?
Yeah, when I went up there, it was the first time I'd ever been back to Old Trafford as a player, and I didn't make a huge impact as a player. I weren't really expecting that many people to remember who I were, but I started the game, and when I got subbed off, I got a standing ovation from Old Trafford, which is obviously some feeling to hear that crowd sort of clapping you off the pitch. So it was a lovely, sort of made their hairs on the back of my neck stand up when I heard the reception I got when I came off.
We have to talk about a couple of things that happened during your time at Manchester United with the media. It's quite, I would say, very widely covered in the local papers. I was reading an article about how the BBC, there was a show on BBC that made fun of you, which really then troubled you a little bit mentally as well, right? Talk us through that. What was going through? Because you kind of suffered in silence there.
Yeah. I think I was such a young guy. I didn't really know how to deal with it, really. I'd sort of come straight out of school. All I've ever done was football. So I didn't know when this sort of incident happened, and it was happening every week. I didn't know how to deal with it. I never told anyone about it. I never told my family, the club or anything. So I did sort of suffer in silence, as it were. So I think off the back of that is the learning of sort of knowing yourself well enough to talk about your feelings, and having a better education of that for younger people would help in the future, other people going through tough times. Because I'm sure you'll agree, the best way to deal with things is to talk to someone or other people about it, because then you get it off your chest real quick rather than keeping it all inside you for a long period of time.
Were you angry and bitter at the guys at that time where they were picking on you because they had no reason to pick on you, but just because the way you looked?
Yeah, no, but not really. I've never sort of thought I hate these guys or I want something bad to happen to them or anything like that. It was all I wanted inside my heart was for it to stop. I used to watch the show or whatever, or watch it back, and it just made my heart sink all the time whenever I saw my name on it. So I wouldn't say I never felt angry or bitter about it. I just desperately wanted it to all stop, really.
It must have been even harder for you to deal with it, because Gary Lineker, who's a big name in England, he played for England, must have been, at some point you must have also treated him like a star, like a role model. Even he got in on the act.
Yeah, well, he was just part of the show. I think it was more or less the same people on the show every week, the same 6 people. I can't say that one person done it more than anyone else. I've never really watched it back, but he's a fantastic footballer who I watched growing up. But again, I've got no ill feeling to him. It was a long time ago, and it's happened now. But hopefully, obviously, albeit 20 years down the line, but speaking about it and raising awareness of talking about your problems and that sort of thing, hopefully it might help a few people in the future.
Do you think Gary Lineker came out and apologized for the incident? Do you think he did it genuinely, or because he's on television and it is fashionable to do that?
To be honest, I'm not really give it a huge amount of thought. All that I can take it on, or anyone can take it on, is face value. So I've got no idea what's going on with anyone else. So again, it's not something I've given a huge amount of thought to, really.
Let's talk about these days. So the transition from you went to Hometown Rangers. That was your last club. Finished off in 2016. How hard was it for you to call it a day as a professional player?
Oh, incredibly hard. I don't think even I went to play for Hometown. That was with my friend. He was the manager, so I was doing him a favour. But even after that, I think for the next few years, I never really admitted to myself that my career was over. I don't know, in the back of my mind, I was still thinking I might get another offer coming from somewhere or something like that. So it's a hard, like mentally, it's really hard. And I think it takes time to get over that. I got done all my coaching qualifications and got involved with coaching at the academy at Cambridge United, but never really, it wasn't really a passion. I think it's always going to be hard to find something that you love as much as playing football, but it's important to get as close to that as possible. And I didn't really find that coaching, so I sort of moved away from that, and I'm in a much better place now, away from professional football, and sort of setting up another coaching organisation that's couldn't be further away from professional football. It's all about kids having fun playing, not about developing into the next Lionel Messi, but about developing a love for football, regardless of you're really gifted or it's your first experience of the game.
No, I remember when I finished, because I was forced to finish football. I couldn't really accept it. Every day I was hoping that the phone would ring, like someone to call, and you you look at all your old clubs, they're going through a bit of a rough patch. They probably might need a defender. Did you feel like that? The phone was going to ring anytime that someone's going to ask you to come and play?
Yeah, at the same time, I did get a couple of calls, but because I'd been at Cambridge and I was quite settled, I didn't really fancy moving away again. So I don't know, I just felt inside me that I was still a professional footballer. I'm sure you've had the same thing, but it was just a real tough, like really tough to deal with mentally, of actually letting it go and finally accepting I'm still a young guy. It's time for another part of my life to begin now.
Absolutely. The strange thing that I like to share is that over the last week, I would say I've had like 3 dreams of me making a comeback and playing. Like, it's strange. I'm 45 now. And in the dream, like someone's rang me, one of the top teams rang me, say, "Can you come back?" I'm like, "I'm 45, I can't play." But you wake up having that feeling that you really miss playing football, which is sometimes I feel as though that that part of you never goes away. Is that the same for you?
Yeah. I think it's still always gonna. I still actually play now for the village where I live, so just at a local level. So I still get my hit once a week by having a run around now, but I'm certainly not that effective as I'd like to be.
Yeah, I know we all are the same. So let's talk about what you do now, because you have a football franchise that you work on, and what's the future looking for you like?
So part of an organisation called the Football Fun Factory, and we're really passionate about children's participation in the game, boys and girls. Our programmes run for children from 2 to 12 years. And like I say, it's just all about having fun and using football really as a vehicle to develop positive life skills like communication, fair play, sportsmanship, that sort of thing. So it's a real privileged position to be in, to help children, teach children and things. So our aim is to franchise out the Football Fun Factory and eventually sometime down the line have football fun factories all over the world. So it's a lofty ambition, but it's something that we're real passionate about and got real belief in what our programs are.
Nice one. Have you ever thought of going into football management?
No, it's not something I'm that interested in. I remember being a player myself and I'd been a nightmare to manage. So I'd rather leave it to other people, I think, and just enjoy watching the games when I can.
What would you like to be remembered for? Because I think when you look at all the teams that you played for, you had quite a long career playing. But people remember you for being a Manchester United player. What would you like to be remembered for?
I think when it all comes to that day, when it all comes to an end, I think maybe all the football and that would have fallen out. Does it really matter? Obviously, like to be remembered as a good footballer, but more importantly, I think as a good person, someone who done the right thing. So I think to those closest to me, my family and friends, I'd rather forget about the football really and be remembered as what I was as a man.
Nice one. Luke, thank you so much. We've almost chatted for an hour. It was really good talking to you, understanding the man behind the name. Of course, you played for a huge club. Thank you so much for taking time and to be part of this interview.
No worries. Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, and thank you for all of you watching at home. And if you like such interviews, I have a sports show on the weekend with CNA 938 in Singapore on Saturday from 8 to 10. If you like more such interviews, make sure you tune into that. With that said, thank you very much, Luke. All the best. We wish you the best for the future. And hopefully somewhere down the line, we can have another conversation.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.